The knock came at 12:03 a.m., sharp and urgent, cutting through the silence of my grief like a knife. I'd been sitting in the dark for hours, my mother's obituary still glowing on my laptop screen, trying to find the courage to hit submit to the funeral home's website. 24 hours ago, she'd been alive. Now I was choosing between mahogany and oak, between roses and lilies, between words that could never capture what she meant to me. I wasn't expecting visitors. I wasn't expecting anything except the long, hollow night ahead. Through the peephole, I saw her, Diana Reeves, CEO of Hartman Technologies, my boss of 6 years. But this wasn't the Diana I knew from board meetings and quarterly reviews. Her designer suit was wrinkled, her usually perfect auburn hair hung loose around her shoulders, and she was crying. Actually crying, tears streaming down her face in the harsh glow of my porch light. "You're the one I want," she said when I opened the door, her voice breaking. "I want to stay tonight. Please. I have nowhere else to go." My exhausted brain struggled to process this. Diana Reeves didn't show up at employees' houses at midnight. Diana Reeves didn't cry. Diana Reeves certainly didn't beg. "Mrs. Reeves?" I stepped aside instinctively, years of Midwest hospitality overriding my confusion. "What's wrong? What happened?" She walked past me into my small entryway, and I noticed she was barefoot, her stockings torn, her feet bleeding. She carried nothing but her phone, clutched in her shaking hand like a lifeline. "I left," she whispered, staring at nothing. "I finally left him." The pieces clicked into place. 6 years of working closely with Diana meant I'd seen the signs, even though she'd hidden them well. The carefully applied makeup that sometimes didn't quite cover a bruise. The way she flinched when people approached her too quickly. The phone calls she'd take in her office with the door locked, her voice tight and placating. Her husband, Richard Reeves III, was old Seattle money, a venture capitalist whose family had buildings named after them. I'd met him twice at company functions. He'd looked through me like I was furniture, but he'd watched Diana like a hawk watches prey. "Sit down," I said gently, guiding her to my couch. "Let me get something for your feet." I returned with warm water, antiseptic, and bandages. As I cleaned the cuts on her feet, she started talking, the words tumbling out like they'd been dammed up for decades. "I married him when I was 23, she said. "Fresh out of Stanford, hungry to prove myself. He was older, established, and he promised to help me build something. And he did, in his way. He connected me with investors, opened doors. But every door he opened, he held the key to. Every success I had, he took credit for. And when I started to outgrow his shadow, when my company started making real money, real impact, that's when it got worse." Her voice dropped to barely a whisper. "Tonight, I closed the Yamamoto deal. 3 years of work. $200 million. Jobs for 600 people. It's the biggest deal in our company's history." When I got home to tell him, he said I looked fat in my suit. Said I was getting too old, too ambitious, too difficult. And then he grabbed my throat. My hand stilled on the bandage I was tying. "Did you call the police?" "No." She laughed bitterly. "Do you know who his golf partner is? The police chief. Do you know who sits on the board of the children's charity I chair? His mother. Do you know how many times I've tried to leave before? 4. And every time, he found me. He has investigators, lawyers, connections everywhere. Except here." She looked at me then, really looked at me. "You're the one person in my life he knows nothing about. I keep my work life separate. He doesn't know my employees' names or where they live. When I ran, I realized I had nowhere to go. All my friends are our friends. My family lives 2,000 miles away and they loved him at our wedding. The only person I could think of was you." "Why me?" I asked, genuinely confused. We had a good working relationship, but we weren't close. She was the CEO. I was a project manager. Because 3 months ago, you stood up in that meeting and told me I was wrong, she said. Do you remember? The Stratton project. I wanted to cut corners, rush it to market. You stood up in front of 15 people and told me it wasn't ready. That pushing it would compromise the product and put users at risk. Everyone else in that room was terrified to contradict me. But you did. I remembered. I'd thought I was going to be fired. Instead, she'd stared at me for a long moment, then said, "You're right. We delay launch." That's when I knew, Diana continued. I knew you were someone who valued doing the right thing over being safe. Someone who had courage. And tonight, when I needed courage, I thought of you. You're the one I want. I want to stay tonight, because you're the only person I trust not to send me back to him. The weight of her trust settled over me like a blanket. Here was a woman who commanded boardrooms, who'd built $100 million company, who appeared on Forbes lists, sitting on my second-hand couch in torn stockings, asking me for shelter. You can stay as long as you need, I said. The words came easily, even though my life was already in chaos. Even though my mother had just died and I was drowning in grief and funeral arrangements. Even though Diana's husband probably had the resources to make anyone who helped her regret it. Because some things are more important than safety. Some things are more important than convenience. Thank you, she breathed, and started crying again. Not delicate tears but deep, wrenching sobs that shook her whole body. I sat beside her and did what my mother had done for me just weeks ago, the last time I'd cried like this. I held her hand and let her break apart. Eventually, the tears slowed. She noticed the laptop on my coffee table, the obituary still visible on the screen. Oh God, she said, her hand flying to her mouth. Your mother. I approved your bereavement leave yesterday. I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have come here. You're dealing with your own. Stop, I interrupted. You're exactly where you need to be. I made tea, because that's what you do at 2 a.m. when the world has fallen apart. We sat in my small kitchen, and I told her about my mother. How she'd been a nurse for 40 years. How she'd raised 3 kids on her own after my father died. How she'd taught me that the measure of a person wasn't what they had, but what they gave. She used to say that everyone you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about, I said. That kindness costs nothing but means everything. I didn't always understand it when I was younger. I thought she was naive. But now you understand, Diana finished. I wish I'd met her. She would have liked you, I said. She always respected people who built things, who created jobs, who made a difference. I don't feel like I've made a difference, Diana said quietly. I built a company, sure. But what does that matter if I couldn't even protect myself? If I let a man treat me like property for 15 years? You're here now, I pointed out. You left. That takes more courage than anything else. She was quiet for a long moment. I'm scared. I'm more scared than I've ever been. He's going to come looking for me. He's going to use everything he has against me. And I'm so tired of fighting. I thought about my mother, about her last words to me in the hospital. Keep showing up, she'd whispered. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. That's how you change the world, one day at a time. Then don't fight alone, I said. Let me help you. Let the people who care about you help you. I don't even know how to do that, Diana admitted. I've been alone in this for so long. Over the next few hours, we made a plan. I called my sister, who was a lawyer, and she connected us with a colleague who specialized in domestic violence cases. We documented everything, the injuries, the timeline, the history. Diana's phone had been filling with messages from Richard, escalating from concerned to angry to threatening. We saved every one.